Okay, so here's part two. For some reason the video recorder cut out after 15 minutes of class time, so I get to do this all over again. It should be a little more fun and faster, hopefully. So this is where we should have, during last class, been able to start having some fun and being able to manipulate our space frame a bit and start to get that following kind of everything where we were at. We've added in the bottom chords. I've done a little bit of grouping in here, so here's where we're creating our webs, here's where we're creating our bottom chords, here's where we're creating our webs, here's where we're creating our top chords. We can see that kind of as we move through this. Then there's our webs going both ways. So now what we want to do is really mess this curve up, or the surface up, excuse me. I'm going to rebuild this with maybe 4 points on each one. And I'm just going to pretend that we have some kind of like canopy, glass canopy going over like a cool cafe area or something along those lines. And we're going to stretch this because we have a bunch of weird existing buildings that are going to be like kind of changing stuff. I don't know, just playing around with it, having some fun. We're going to twist this thing around a bit. Maybe I want it to be kind of cool. I mean, I'm not just trying to totally freeform it, but we could do that too. Maybe something, maybe we'll stretch these guys out. Oops. On this one, I'll stretch you out. And this one, we'll get this, we'll bring it over here. Just kind of getting it a little bit wacky, and we're doing this for some kind of good reasons. And then maybe I'll pull this one up, get a little bit of an arch in there. I don't know why this is cool. Maybe I'll stop this. Or actually, I'm just going to undo that, make it a little bit more simple, just because I'm not going to want to look at that shape for the next hour or so. While I'm doing this, I'm going to rebuild this with like 3 points instead of 4. So I get one midpoint in the middle here. I'm going to grab that, I'm going to give it a little bit of a dome shape. And then I'm going to kind of pinch and pull 2 of these ends. So this end, I'm going to pull this out a little bit, and I'm going to pinch this one in a little bit. And it's still not very pretty, but it's at least a little bit not as ugly as that other one I was making. So maybe this is what we want, maybe it's not, but it will serve our needs for now. So now what we have, if we look at kind of our base surface here, and if I turn this to Arctic, it'll be a little bit easier to see. We have a double curvature surface, so these squares can't be built out of glass. Let's say we're going to do a glass canopy here. It's not going to work. We can't make glass curve that way. Well, we can, but it's super expensive. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull out all of our individual surfaces that we have. And so we have 132, which I think 11 times 12 gets us that, which is our kind of domains that we have. And so I'm going to make a surface container just to be able to drag this out, make it a little bit easier to see. And then I'm going to rationalize this so all the panels are flat, and the easiest way I know how to do that is to take each of these panels and we'll divide them into triangles. And then that way, a triangle only has 3 points. By definition, that'll always be planar, unless there's some kind of crazy 4th dimensional triangle geometry that I don't know about. So the first thing I'm going to do, so I have this list of 132. I'm going to list item. I'm just going to extract one of them. List item. So I just want one of these triangles to be able to work on it kind of as a separate deal here, so that I can get my logic right with how I want to subdivide this so that it's flat. And then I can apply it to everything else, similar like what we did with the surface rationalization. So the next thing I'm going to do is deconstruct. I always think explode because of the flames on the logo. We're going to deconstruct this. We're going to take our vertices. We have 4 vertices. We have these 4 corner points. I'm going to go to point list just so we can see those. The size I'm going to say is, we'll go with, hopefully 12 is big enough to see. There we go. Great. So my logic is I want to create, I want to triangulate this panel. So I'm going to go from 0 to 1 to 2, back to 0, and that'll be 1 triangle. Then I'm going to go 0 to 2 to 3, back to 0, back to 2, and that'll make our other triangle. So if I go to list item, again, I'm just going to copy this over. Instead of trying to find it, I'm going to put my vertices in here. And so one way I can do it, I can say this is 0. I can copy this down and say this is 1. Right, and go on until I get all 3 of my points, or all 4 of my points here. But the faster way to do that, oh hey there, is if I zoom in really close. I've got these sneaky buttons, and so I is equal to index. So I can say I plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. So this gives me all 4 of my points now. A little bit faster way to do that, and a little bit cleaner in terms of this node. So then I'm going to come in, and if I go to my surfaces, I'm going to go to freeform. There's this 4-point surface, and there's kind of a little trick, is that it will actually take 3 points. So if I say, okay, here's point 0, I'm going to connect that one in. Here's point 1, I'm going to connect that one in. Now I need point 2, connect that one in. It will actually build me this surface. If I hide this, now we can see I've got my triangle here. So now I need to build another triangle. So for this one, I'm going to say 0 to 2 to 3. And this gives me my 2 triangles. And so now I have I've planarized, and we can see here there's like a curve happening, and we see our straight flat edges. I can now apply that to everything. So I can drop out this list item, because I want to take all of my surfaces now and do it to everything. And I can delete this points list because it's just gonna kind of get my way. And I can delete that list item because now I have kind of my planarization, and I can just group this if I wanted to make it kind of clean, and always label groups. So we're gonna solve this triangle flat, or triangle panels. That should be enough. Great. Right click, add a group. Perfect. So now I've got a little bit of logic here. If I zoom out now and I kind of move around, the like fake sun in Rhino is showing me now they're kind of working along this flat. It looks a lot better and a lot more realistic than if I had them all along that double curvature, super expensive glass. So now what I want to do is I want to be able to create some labels for these, and also to kind of build this out and make it a little bit more realistic. I'm going to create a list of all the panels that exist in this geometry, and I'm going to label them out for like a cut sheet. If like, let's say we're going to have these like water jet, we want to make sure that all of our dimensions meet the criteria for that water jet, and we also just kind of want to be able to itemize and keep track of everything. I'm just going to bring this up just a little bit for fun. And so in order to do that, I need to get a list of every one of these panels, and I need to take the a plane that's in plane with this triangle, and then I need to orient that to be flat so that I can see everything in a flat world, because a laser jet, a water jet is going to cut a flat panel. And so we kind of want to orient that, help ourselves out, help the fabricators, help our contractors, and also help ourselves be able to kind of keep track of everything we've got here. And this is directly related to data sets, because we're going to take the data inherent to this 3D model, extract it into a list. And so then our list of triangles and our list of panels and everything's going to be all congruent. And so in order to do that, we're going to use a node called orient, and we can see this icon here shows like two planes being oriented. And so for that, I'm actually gonna, now that I'm kind of out of this group, I'm gonna make another surface container. Again, try to keep everything a little bit cleaner. We can see here we have kind of like, say maybe like panel A and panel B of our quads. So each quad is made up of two panels. So to start, I'm just gonna work on only one of these at a time. So I'm gonna we're gonna need our geometry that we're going to move. We're gonna need a source plane, which is gonna be in plane with this. We need a target plane. So I'm gonna create a list of planes that are just flat in the XY world, and we're gonna see kind of how that's gonna work out, but I also have to get our panels here. So if I go to evaluate surface, I grab this, and then for my point, if we remember kind of the beginning of class, I was saying that this evaluate kind of needs like more of like a numerical point than like a 3D graphical point. So I'm going to come in here and say construct point. Bring that in. And for now, it's just at kind of 0, 0, 0, or this corner, which is completely fine. We could also say like 0.5. We can move this point around, but for all intents and purposes, we actually don't have to do that. Oh, got to reparameterize all of this. So now that moves that to like the middle point, but that's actually not important because we know that wherever I move this plane on this triangle, like this is a flat triangle. So it's kind of a redundant kind of playing around with, but it's completely fine if you want to come back and kind of mess with that, all the more power. So now we have our source frame, which is a cool part about this evaluate surface. It does give us quite a bit of information to use there. So we're going to bring that into our source. We're going to bring our panels or our surfaces or triangles as the geometry we'll want to move. And now we can see we're getting like just a mess here. And the reason for that is our target only has one plane or one, the final plane is only defined by this world XY. So it's just stacking everything in like one place. And we don't want that. So what we're going to do is we're going to make an XY plane. And I'm actually going to set a custom origin for that. So later on, if I want to, I can move these around. And to do that, I'm going to make a point container. And I'm not going to reference any Rhino geometry. I'm actually going to right click and say set one point. And this will allow me to kind of anywhere just drop a point. And then if I click on that, now I have like a gumball and I can move that, but it's not Rhino. Like if I turn off the preview here, you can see that disappears. So it's like actually a Grasshopper point contained within itself, kind of. So I'm going to drag that into the origin. And then I'm going to make a linear array of these that has the same, if we come up here to our param viewer, I'm going to make a linear array that has the same data structure as what we have here. And I might just flatten this out. So now we can see I have 132 panels, but I typically don't like to flatten things if I don't have to. So I'm actually going to leave that and say, okay, each one of these is in its own branch. Each panel is. So we have 132 panels. We have 132 branches. That's essentially what I'm going to recreate down here. So I'm going to do a linear array, and we're going to put in this geometry, and then for our direction, I'm going to look over here. I'm going to say I want it in the world X. So I'm going to say X. If I just type in X, it'll give me a unit X vector, and don't want that for the count. I want that in the direction. And then rather than having to pipe in like an amplitude and then bring that in, there's actually a easier way to do that, and that's this factor. So for the factor, I'm going to say maybe like 200, which will give me enough room in between each of these. So now, if I zoom out, I can see I have this kind of marching along of all these panels, but I only have 10 of them currently, and I need 132. So what I can do is I can say list length, and most of what I'm going over here, the kind of major ones, are all under this lists, which is under the sets tab. And again, if you hold Alt and Control and then click on it and hold your left mouse button down, it'll show you where the stuff is coming from. So the linear array is actually a transformation, but list length is again back in sets. So I'm going to grab the length of this, and I'm actually going to flatten it so that I just have a single number. If I leave it expanded, you can see it's going to give me kind of a different data set here. And to kind of show how that's working, if I pop open into a panel, just a blank panel, we can see I have, the list length is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 forever. But if I flatten it, and I kind of put, again, if you think about eggs in an egg carton, I'm putting all my eggs into the same carton, and then it's just going to count them. Whereas before, each one of these panels is in like its own egg carton, and so there's only one egg in a carton. That's like kind of stupid. No one would do that with eggs, but it's kind of the way this is working. So take that and enter into my count. And so now I have, you faintly see it here, but I have like 132 planes that now I can then put into my target. And we can see here we're getting an error. And the reason for that is that my data structure is not the same. So I've got data with 1 branches that has 132 items. And then up here I have data with 132 branches that only has 1 item. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to graft this. And now we can see that data tree is actually the same. So in that param viewer, both of these actually match up. So data with 132 branches, data with 132 branches. So now we have all of this information is coming in the way that we want it to. So the next thing that I want to do is to be able to create a label for these so that I know if I'm trying to get information about just this one panel now that I have it kind of separated. I want to know where on our model that exists. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to right click on this. I'm going to call this spacing. And I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. It looks like these are a little too far apart. So I can kind of tighten them up. Just so long as they're not touching each other too far. Maybe 170-ish. It's going to be fine. Okay, and so now I need to create a point and a text tag that will allow me to kind of tag each one of these. So if I go to tag, there's text tag here. This is just a regular text tag, but there's a text tag 3D, and this gives us a few more options, like the text size and everything like that. This one is kind of scaleless, so it'll scale to the viewport and get like bigger or smaller no matter what. And it can be a little bit confusing or kind of obfuscate our model and our information that we do want to see. So we're going to use the text tag 3D. For the location, I'm actually going to take this linear array, and I'm actually going to pull this out. I'm going to grab a point. I could grab a plane, but a plane and a point kind of transfer over pretty well, so it'll let me do that. I'm going to move this. If I look over here, I'm going to move it in the Y. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to move it in the Y with a unit Y vector. And for the factor, I'm going to say, like, if I do that, I need a negative number. So if I double click on kind of the gray side over here, and I can set this minimum to -100. And then I can kind of drag this into the negatives to bring it down. So it's either going to be positive Y or negative Y. So I want my kind of text tag to float a little bit below each one of these. I don't want it to be completely in line with that corner. Again, just so that that geometry can kind of be clean and on its own. So here's my location for my text. For my text, I'm actually going to get a series And for that series, I can actually take this point, or even this geometry, and I'm going to say list length. Again, similar like what we did up here, we're getting the total count of panels. Now I just need a total count of planes because they're one-to-one with a panel. So if I say, okay, I'm going to grab that, and again, I need to flatten this so that I only get 132 as a list, because what I'm going to do is I'm creating a series of numbers instead of just a single number. For the start, I'm going to leave that at 0, step, leave that at 1, but for the count, I'm going to put in this length. And what that'll do is if I open up a panel that's, I keep typing too many panels, now it gives me 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you know, and so on and so forth. So if I bring this into the text, and I'm probably going to have to change the size. Oh, and we're going to see here it's going to kind of crash because it's putting all of the text. Again, we're looking at kind of matching up our data here. So here I have everything kind of in its own, it's in like one list, and up here everything's like in a separate list. So you could either flatten or graft one of these, and it'll fix it. So if I just say for the series, and if I graft it, now we can see I have 0. Well, it's a little too small, so again, kind of bring this into the size. So now we can see similar data. I can grab my param viewers and double check that again, but now I have, you know, 0, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth. And if I kind of hide this stuff for now, so it doesn't get in our way, makes a little bit more sense. And I'm going to leave that visible for now because we're probably going to reference this, and I can, if I group this, and I'm just going to say location. There we go. Just give myself a little hint there. So now I have my text tag. I'm going to pull this over, kind of clean this up a little bit. And that's pretty much what I need to tag these ones. There is one more thing that I want to do actually, and it's going to involve adding a little bit more text into this because just the 0, 1, 2, 3 isn't going to help me as much as I would like it to. So I'm going to open up a panel here, and I'm just going to copy it over. And I don't know why I did that, but I did. And I'm going to say panel A dash, capital A dash. And what I want to do is I want to add the series to the end of that. So if I hit enter, kind of skinny this guy up a little bit. Then what I can do is there's a tool called Concatenate. And this is like a computer term for adding strings together, and strings are a computer term for text. So now what my result is going to be is a little bit nicer. So now I can see, well, panel, you know, panel A0, panel A1, panel A2, panel A3. The reason I'm calling it A is because we have 2 panels per quad. So I'll have like A panel and a B panel for quad 0. And maybe that's not super important right now, but it will be really important a little bit later. So then I can say text tag, what do we call these? Cut list panels. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's not the best way to word this. So I can kind of group that and bring this over here. So cool. So now I need to do this one more time, and I'm actually going to do it up here. The difference is I don't have to move this geometry. I just want that tag to be right on that corner. So if I copy this and relabel it, oh yeah, text. Text is what we want, not text. Okay, text. This is going to be text tag, maybe model panels would be good. Okay, hopefully that will make a little bit more sense. And then we actually can just bypass all of that and put that right in there. I'm going to get rid of this stuff. Oops. I'm going to bring that length from my list of an other list instead of over here. And I could do the same thing. And there's 132 points, there's 132 planes. We're going to be fine either way. And then just kind of clean this up a little bit because it makes me happy. Great. So now we have to actually bring in the plane from all the way back here, which actually was coming from our evaluate surface. So if we grab that frame and we pipe that in, we can now see we're getting a label for each one of our panels. This is a little bit big, so I'm going to bring it down a bit. And, you know, I don't really like where this is being located, so I'm going to come all the way back here, and I'm going to put in a 1 for each of these. Oh, of course, now it's going to explode on me, so I'm not going to do that. It'll be fine. That's fine. It's just representative of what we're looking at. I think I'm just a little confused because it's pretty late at night. Guess that's still wrong. So location, I think this does have to be, these shouldn't be points, these should be surface, no, a plane. So I'm going to grab this plane here, and then you can delete that. Make sure I add this to the group so it doesn't get all squirrely on me. And I can bring that in there. I'm going to do the same thing up here. This plane, I can delete this, and then make sure I add it to this group so it doesn't get squirrely and lost. And there we go with the location. So now they kind of line up a little bit better with each of the panels, and that was the whole purpose of that. Cool. I'm gonna hide this. There we go. So now we have our text tags all kind of corresponding to each other. I'm actually gonna hide these tags too, or sorry, those planes. I kind of don't need to really see any of this. Cool. So now I have panel 0 and panel 0. And if I want to check this, what I can do is actually pull these over. I'm going to make a list item. I'm going to grab the transform geometry. And I'm going to flatten this so that I'm not getting the first item of every one in the list. And I'm going to do the same thing for the original panels over here. So now I can see I have that panel and that panel. And an easy way to check it, especially with these kind of, like each one of these is going to have a little bit different area, especially if I do something like this. No two panels are going to be the same exactly. So I could just really quickly say, get me the area. And I could do a whole bunch of stuff. I could get like the edge lengths and double check all of that a little bit further, but I just want to make it just a quick check to make sure that it's apples to apples, you know, that I'm referencing that panel 0 is panel 0. And so we can see here, like our areas are exactly the same. And if I say like index 1, for example, we can see like immediately that area doesn't line up. So I know that panel 1 or panel 0 is panel 0. That's essentially all this was, is just a quick check to make sure that we're on the right track before we get too far ahead of ourselves. So then we can see, yeah, panel A0, you know, there's kind of a visual check too. You can kind of, you know, if it looks about right, you're gonna be good to go. So now what we can do is I actually want to create some dimensions around these. So I'm going to get a surface, surface. Again, just to kind of keep things pretty clean. And I'm going to get the ones that I moved, which are these. So if I grab those, bring a surface out over here. And I want to deconstruct this. Deconstruct vrep. And I want to get these edges now. And I have three, if I open up my param viewer, I have a really nice kind of data set now. So for each branch that is the triangular geometry, I have 3 edges. So that's going to work out really nicely for an offset. So I'm going to offset these curves. And a distance, I'm going to say maybe like 5. 5 might be good. Maybe a little further. Maybe I'll go to like, add 10, why not? And so the reason I'm doing this, so I know that these edges are exactly the edge of that triangle. I'm offsetting them so that I can draw a dimension along these lines. So that dimension is going to be, if I go to dimension, which should be under display, and dimensions, I can do a line dimension, and put it over here. And the only thing else I'm going to want to play with is the size. So I can put that size in. 12 is probably way too big. So for max, I'm going to say 10 is going to be my max. And I'm going to kind of bring that down just a bit because it's way too big. And that seems to be fitting okay. So then I can take all of this and hide it. And now I've got these really nice dimension strings that are telling me a little bit more information about each of these panels. So I can say dimension, cut list panels, I guess. I don't really like that, but it'll work. Great. And so now I kind of have this stack here of everything that I want to do. And I've got this little group here, which is I'm going to call, bring it over here, group it, oops, give it a little title. I'm going to say orient panels to cut list, I guess. I mean, that's, again, you can come up with your own way of helping yourself remember this stuff. So now I have kind of all 3 of these, and I'm actually bring this over, kind of tighten some things up. So now I'm doing that for all of my A panels, and I want to do it for my B panels. So if I copy that down right here, now because I've been using these kind of little bits and bytes here or the little containers that help me move, they're not little bits and bytes, but because I use like a surface container before I start kind of a group, I can actually just grab the next one, and now I'll change my location point down here, and then I have to change my text. So this is panel A, it should be panel B. I'm working on my B panels. And I have to do the same thing here. And actually, I could just use this same node and bring it into both. And then I'll only have to change it in one place. But for the sake of what we're looking at now, I think that'll be okay. And then I can just group both of these. And now I've got my A panels, my B panels. I've got my A panels, my B panels, and I might actually make those just a little bit bigger to like a 4, just so I can see them, maybe a 5. 5 might be too big. Yeah, 5's too big. I'll go with a 4 here, and a 4 here. And now we have a pretty cool looking space frame with a panelized surface. And all of our panels are called out and dimensioned. And so the only other thing to do, I'm actually going to hide this for now. I'm just going to do some custom display stuff to make it look pretty. So up here I've got a pipe. There's a node called custom preview and a color swatch. So if I enable this, enable, not preview. It's going to take a while because it's adding a lot of geometry to a lot of different parts and pieces. And then I can take all of these and hide them. So I get this kind of cool gray space frame kind of thing going. And now I want to make this look a little bit more like glass. So I'm going to come over, here are my triangle panels. I'm just going to say surface, bring this up in here, bring this up in here. Again, custom preview, bring this over. And the default is pink, which is lovely, but doesn't look like glass. But maybe it doesn't matter, maybe it's a solid roof. We're gonna do glass. So I'm gonna add a swatch. If I double click on the color portion of the swatch, I can actually change the transparency, the value, hue, saturation, a whole bunch of stuff. And there's even an eyedropper if you want to like sample stuff around too, which is nice. But if I plug that in and then hide that original surface and hide these surfaces, now I've got kind of this glassy looking space frame structure, a little bit more cool than I don't know, maybe what I originally thought of. There's a whole bunch of other ways we can build space frames and stuff, but the main point was really about the use of data sets, data lists, how all of that can really expand what you're capable of doing with your model. And if you're clean about how you manage all of it, it'll save you a ton of work in the long run, especially again, for this, we're kind of looking really far in the future of like how they'd actually build this, but you know, this could even be just adding more geometry. We could maybe scale these or add little holes or perforations, or you know, we'll add like a portal frame and then set the glass into it, or you know, there's a million and one things we could do with this. But for now, this kind of wraps up everything we went over in class, and hopefully this was helpful. And we'll see you on Tuesday.